Brachos Daf Nun begins right after a Mishnah. The Gemara begins by commenting on the end of the Mishnah, which ends the Daf before. The discussion over there is whether or not the leader of the Zimun should say Nevarech, let us bless, and include himself in the Brachos Hamazon, or he should say Baruch Hu, you guys bless, and take himself out of it. The Gemara will comment on that in a number of statements. Then the Gemara has a list of things which one should say in the Brachos Hamazon or the Zimun in order to identify himself as a Talmid Chacham. If he doesn't say that, then he's a fool. The Gemara then gets into the Machokes in the Mishnah itself, which we just learned, which is about whether we change the text based on how many people are there. The Gemara gives a source for the Machokes and a psak in it, and then we get to another Mishnah. This Mishnah contains 3 halachos. One is about if the groups can split off. You can split a zimun off into subgroups. If you can combine groups in different rooms. And then it talks about wine, which is watered down or not watered down. The Gemara comments on all these 3 halachos, and then the Gemara launches into a whole discussion about having proper respect for food. So let us begin the Gemara. The Gemara begins by commenting on the Mishnah, which we have just seen. At the end of the Mishnah, we had a statement that if there is an exact number that qualifies for a certain formula to be said, then the leader should say Nivarech. We all have to bless together because we have to be included. He himself has to be part of the group. There's an exact number. Without him, they can't say the words that they want to say, Elekenu or whatever it is. The Gemara says that if there's more, then he could say Baruch Hu, you guys bless, and he himself will be out of it. So the Gemara starts off and says, Shmuel says a person should never take himself out of the group. You should always include yourself in the group, and you should always say Nevarech. You should never say Baruch Hu. The Gemara says, but what do you mean? In the Mishnah it says you should say Baruch Hu. So the Gemara answer is no. The Mishnah was saying you could say Baruch Hu, you have the option of saying it. You're not wrong if you do, but it's not correct. The better thing is to say Nevarech and include yourself in the group. Now the Gemara brings 3 sources that show that this is correct, that a person should always include himself in the group, and the correct thing is to say Nevarech, let us bless, and not you guys bless. So first of all, we have a statement of Rav Adavar Ava. This is we learned in a brayso as follows: if you have a group of 6 people, then they can split off into 2. If you have 7, 8, or 9, you can also split off into 2. So, now, the Gemara says, if you have 6 and you split up into 2, that means each one will have 3. So then they'll have to say Nevarech, because they won't be able to say Baruch Hu. You need to have at least 4 to say Baruch Hu. So the Gemara says, if Nevarech is better than Baruch Hu, so then fine, you didn't lose anything. But if Baruch Hu is better than Nevarech, how can they split? They lose their chance to say the better one. This is proof number 1, that Nevarech is better than Baruch Hu, not the other way around, just like Shmuel said. Proof number 2, that Nevarech is better than Baruch Hu. It's better to include yourself than to exclude yourself. So we have a brayso that says the following thing. It says people who say Baruch Hu or Nevarech, each one is okay. It's not a big deal either way. But the nitpickers will start up with you if you say Baruch Hu. It's better to say Nevarech. So you see, it's just as good, or it's better. It's definitely not worse. Okay, those are the supports for this. Now the Gemara moves on to a slightly different subject. The Gemara will bring 4 different parts of Brachos Hamazon or Zimun that you could have possible slight textual variances. The Gemara will say one way, if you say it one way, you're a Talmid Chacham, say it the other way, you're a fool. Variance number 1 is as follows. When you say Uv'tuvay chayinu, and through his goodness we live. If you say Uv'tuvay and through his goodness we live, you're a Talmid Chacham. You say Umituvay and from his goodness, you're a fool. What's the difference? You say from his goodness, then you're only asking Hashem. You're not asking, you're only praising Hashem for part of his goodness that he gives to you. You're limiting his gift to you. You're saying from your goodness, not all of your goodness. So if you say that, you're a fool. That's a statement of Rebbe. So now the Gemara challenges this. The Gemara is going to challenge most of these. The Gemara says that Abaye said to Rav Dimi, what do you mean? I'll show you a place where somebody said from your blessings, and nobody said you're a fool. And say for Shmuel, we find the tefillah umi bir choscha yivarach beis avdechol olam. From your blessings, you should bless the house of your servant. So I come over there, it's not called foolish. They're very funny. That's different. There you have somebody asking. In a tefillah to Hashem, you don't demand all Hashem's goodness. You ask, give me some. You ask humbly. But here you're praising. You praise Hashem. You praise for everything. The Gemara says, okay, but that doesn't solve the problem. I'll show you somewhere where even in a request we demand full on. Right? Where is that? We say that Hashem tells us you should ask Harchiv Pichav Amlei. You should open your mouth wide open and demand whatever you want, and I'll fill it up. So you see, you can ask for everything. The Gemara says no. That Again, that's where you're asking for Torah and mitzvahs. For that, you should demand full force. You're asking for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chesed to you, then you're supposed to humble yourself. But again, if you're praising, so then you should use full force. You shouldn't use the limited language. Okay, now the Gemara introduces the third variance. It's a brisa quoted by Rebbe. Do you say B'tuvay chayinu, or do you say B'tuvay chayim? You say we live by your goodness, or the entire world lives by your goodness. So Rebbe said, you say chayinu. Include yourself. Say we live. If you say chayim, you're excluding yourself. That's foolish. The Gemara says that the Nahar Balai, the people of Nahar Bala, they say the opposite. They say you should say chayim, you shouldn't say chayinu. You shouldn't limit it to you and your friends. You should say the whole world. Praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He sustains the entire world. The Gemara says the halacha is not like the Nahar Balai. It's not what we are supposed to do. Next, fourth thing is Rabbi Yochanan. He says the proper text should be Nevarich she'achalnu mishaloi. Blessed is that we have eaten of his. The Gemara says that's a Talmid Chacham. Who's a fool? What does a fool say? He says blessed is limi she'achalnu mishaloi. Him whom we have eaten of his. He who we have eaten of his. We don't just say blessed that we have eaten of his. We say he who we have eaten of his. What's the difference? If you say who we have eaten of his, makes it sound like there's lots of people we could have eaten from. Lots of chas v'shalom. There are lots of divine forces that could have supplied with us. This one, okay, we're going to bless the one who helped us. That's not correct. There's only one, and he supports the entire universe. So somebody who says he is a fool. So the Gemara challenges this. The Gemara says, but what we say in a different bracha, we say, he who did all these miracles. The Gemara says that's not a problem. When you're talking about miracles, everybody knows it's only Hashem who does miracles. Talking about he who has given food, it makes it sound like not that there's different divine forces, but that there's different owners. That your blessing is for the owner of the house, your host. So that could be various individuals. But if you're discussing miracles, you don't have to worry if you say he who performed the miracles. Everybody knows that can only be Hashem. Okay, now the Gemara brings one more statement of Rabbi Yochanan. You should say Baruch she'achalnu mishaloi. Blessed who we have eaten from his. We should not say Al hamazoin she'achalnu. Blessed is the food that we have eaten, or on the food we have eaten, because that sounds like you're blessing the food. You're not blessing the food, you're blessing Hashem. The Gemara says that's only if you have only 3 people there and you're not saying Hashem's name, you're just saying Shechalnu Mishlei. But if you're saying Elokeinu or something like that, you have any more, then it's not a problem. Because once you're saying Hashem's name, nobody thinks you're going to be blessing the food. Even in the Mishnah, which we saw at the end of the daf before, the Mishnah says, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Elokei Tzavois, Yeshiv Kruvim, Al HaMozoin Shechalnu. It mentions food, and there it's not a problem. Okay, now the Gemara returns to the discussion in the Mishnah. There was a machlokes over there between Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says that every significant number you increase the statement in the zimun, if it's 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, and Rabbi Kiva says from 10 and up it's all the same. The Gemara says the Mishnah starts off and without names it says that it's all the same, and then it starts listing 100, you say this, 1,000, you say this, and the Gemara says it's a stira. The Gemara says no. Later on you'll see we're giving names. This is a machlekes. This is variant opinions here. Now in the Mishnah it said that Rabbi Yossi supported his opinion with the pasuk that says b'makhe lo yisbarchu elokim, with great multitudes you should bless Hashem. So you see that there's a special inyan to have different things for large numbers. So the Gemara says, what is Rabbi Akiva going to do with that? The Gemara says that's not a problem. Rabbi Akiva will tell you that that's used for something else. The whole pasuk is b'makeh is baruch Elokim Hashem yimekar Yisrael. You're blessing Hashem from the source of Israel. Source of Israel. This is referring to the fact that even a fetus in its mother's stomach said Shira al Yam. This is referring to when the Jews crossed through the Yamsuf, Kriyas Yamsuf. So that's what this pasuk is for. I mean, Makar Yisrael, from the source of Israel. So well, then how does Rabbi Aglili use it to prove his position that for each number you have a different phrase? That's very simple. His proof is from B'makelois Baruch Elokim. The first half of the pasuk in large groups you bless Hashem, not from the second half. I mean, Makar Yisrael, that's talking about something else. That is where you learn that a fetus is involved. Okay, now let's discuss what the halacha is. The Gemara says, Rava says the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. From 10 and up, you say Elokeinu, and there's nothing additional for more. The Gemara quotes an incident that seems to be not the way. The Gemara says that Ravina and Rav Chama Bar Buzi were eating in the house of the Reish Galusa, and over there were many, many people, and Rav Chama was counting, wanted to see if there were 100 so that he could say an additional phrase. So Ravina said, you don't have to count. The halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, once we're on the subject, the Gemara brings another halacha which was learned from an incident that happened at the Reish Galusa's house. The Gemara says Rava was there at the Reish Galusa's house, and everybody who was there was trying to split off into groups of 3 to say a zimun. So Gemara says, why groups of 3? Do it in groups of 10, so you could say Elokeinu, even though we hold like Rabbi Akiva 10, you could still say Elokeinu. The Gemara said no, they couldn't, because if they would be saying Elokeinu with a group of 10, they would have to bench loudly, and the Reish Galusa would hear them, and he'd be upset that they're not joining with his zimun that he will do. So the Gemara says, okay, great. So then why didn't they actually join with his zimun? Why were they splitting off into smaller groups? So the Gemara says that the Reish Galusa's house had hundreds of people eating there, and not everybody could hear the zimun. They didn't want to bench with him because they couldn't hear, and it wouldn't be correct. Now the Gemara has another halacha. Rabba Toisfa says, 3 people are eating together, and one of them decides to say Brachos Mazon, he benches without a zimun. So the other 2 could make a zimun later and join him in, even though he benched already, because they'll be yaitza because he ate with them. However, he won't be yaitza zimun with that. You can't say zimun after your Brachos Mazon. It doesn't work for you. Now it goes back to the Mishnah. At the end of the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva tried to prove his position from the fact that in Shul we always say Brachos Hashem HaMevayrach. We don't say a different phrase. So the Gemara actually quotes a machlekes. Rabbi Akiva says the phrase is Brachos Hashem without HaMevayrach. Rabbi Shmuel says it's Brachos Hashem HaMevayrach. So Gemara, obviously we know that everybody says HaMevayrach now. Gemara says that Rafram Bar Papa was once in a shul in Avi Giver, and he was laning. He read from the Torah, and he said the bracha, and he stood up and he said Brachos Hashem. He was quiet, and everybody answered Brachos Hashem HaMevayrach. So Rava went over to him and he said, you're a black earthenware kli. What are you doing getting involved in this machlekes? Say Brachos Hashem HaMevayrach. That works according to all opinions. Rabbi Akiva also agrees that works. Why do you have to get involved? And besides, the halacha, the minig is clear, like Rabbi Shmuel, we say Brachos Hashem HaMevayrach. Don't get involved. Okay, that takes us to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah has a discussion of 3 halachas. Halacha number 1. Can you split up zimun groups into smaller zimun? So the Gemara says as long as you don't lose any status, you can split. 3, 4, 5 can't split because then you'll lose the zimun. 6, 7, 8, and 9 you can split because you're not going to lose anything. Either way, you can only say Shachanu Mishalei without Elokeinu. 10 you can't split. You split 10 into smaller, you'll lose the Elokeinu. Up till 20. 20 already you can split into 2 groups of 10. So again, the rule is you can split into smaller groups as long as you don't lose the zima. Now the Gemara says the opposite. What if you have separate groups, didn't eat together, and they want to join? So the Gemara says as long as they can see each other while they're eating, they count together. And the Gemara brings the third halacha. Wine. Wine in the days of Chazal was very thick and strong, and it could not be drunk the way it is. It was not ready for drinking until it was mixed with 4 parts water. So Gemara says, can you use strong wine that's not watered down yet? The Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer says, you cannot, doesn't count as wine, you can't make a bracha on it, can't use it for zima. And the Chachamim say, you're allowed to use it, it's good enough. Okay, now the Gemara begins. The Gemara first of all asks, why do you need to tell me the halacha that if 3 people ate together, they can't split up? We learned that in the first Mishnah. 3 people ate together, obligated in zimun. So the Gemara offers 3 answers as to what this might be teaching us. Answer number 1, it's talking about a case where 3 people sat together, they washed, they made a bracha, but they didn't eat yet. They still can't split up. It's already considered the chiyuv to say the zimun has already fallen upon them. Second answer, the Gemara says, is referring to where each person ate from his own loaf of bread. In the previous Mishnah, you may have thought it's only if they're sharing a loaf, but if they're eating separate loaves, maybe not. Third answer, the Gemara says the following thing. We're discussing where there were 3 separate groups of 3 each, and then one person left each of the group of 3 and formed a new group of 3. So this group of 3 is formed from 3 people who are part of different groups. The Gemara says this new group can't split up because they already had chiyuv zimun from their old group, even though this group didn't eat together with each other. They ate separately in their own previous group. But they can't split up anymore because they already brought with them a chiyuv zimun. So now the Gemara comments on this. The Gemara says it's only true if the previous groups did not say zimun yet. But if the previous group said zimun, while this guy wasn't there, it's a machlokes if it's while he wasn't there, or if it's even if he was there. If they said zimun already, so then his chiyuv no longer exists. Each individual's chiyuv no longer exists. They didn't eat together, so there's no reason why they should be chiyuv to say zimun together. Now, the Gemara says, I can prove to you this concept that once a chiyuv zimun is taken off, it doesn't come back on by combining people into another group. You have the halacha that a kli, an object that becomes tameh, loses its tumah if it's broken, because it doesn't have a function anymore. Tumah only sticks on functional things. So, the Gemara says in a Mishnah, if you have a bed that was cut or split in any way, the tumah goes off, and you put it back together, it can now take new tumah, but the old tumah doesn't come back on. The Gemara says here also, this chiyuv tumah came off. The chiyuv zimun came off because the original groups did their zimun already. So the pieces that come together, now the one person that left each group and comes together to a new group of 3 doesn't get a new chiyuv just by putting them together and joining them. Gemara comments on the statement in the Mishnah that 2 groups that are eating separately can join together if they can see each other. The Gemara says there's another way that they can join, and that's if they have the same waiter, same person serving the 2 groups, they can join together. Now the Gemara goes on to the last halacha in the Mishnah, which is about wine. So the machlokes is between Rav Elazar and the Chachamim. Rav Elazar says it's not considered to be wine until it's watered down, and the Chachamim say it is. So the Gemara says there's 2 halachas involved over here. First of all, if it's wine, the bracha is hagafen. If it's not wine, the bracha is ha'etz. So according to Rav Elazar, when it's not watered down, the bracha is ha'etz, and according to Chachamim, it's hagafen. Second halacha, the Gemara says, are you allowed to wash your hands with it? According to Rav Elazar, it's wine. You are allowed to wash your hands with it, at least according to the girsa that we have, because it's not wine, it's only fruit juice, and therefore it has halacha of water. The Chachamim say it's already wine, you're allowed to wash your hands with wine. Now the presumption over here is that the issue is that it is degrading to food. We don't want to degrade food, especially wine. And Rabbi Elazar says it's not a problem. Wash your hands with it. So the Gemara says it seems to fit with Shmuel's opinion. There's a statement of Shmuel. You don't have to worry about degrading food. You're allowed to use bread for whatever you want. You can use it to mop the floor. You can use it to do whatever you want. Okay, now the Gemara says there is one halacha about which Rabbi Elazar and the Chachamim agree. You cannot use this non-watered down wine for a cup for a mitzvah. Because you need a very special cup for that. It has to be high quality, and even if it's watered down, even according to Chachamim, that's considered wine, but it's low quality, and therefore you shouldn't use it for that. Now the Gemara says, according to the Chachamim, that is considered wine already, what's it good for? You can't drink it. In what sense is it considered wine? So the Gemara says there are certain recipes called koraiti, which include non-watered down wine in the recipe, and it's the main ingredient, and therefore it has certain chashivas to it. Okay, now the Gemara goes from here into the halacha of taking proper care of food. The Gemara discusses bread. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says there are 4 things which should not do because it'll cause a denigration to bread. We call it bizoyin oichel. The Gemara says 4 things you shouldn't do with bread. First of all, you should not place raw meat on it. It'll ruin it. You should not pass a cup that's filled over it because it might spill on it and ruin it. You should not carry a plate by a bread. You shouldn't hold the plate in the bread. That'll also destroy it. And the last halacha is you shouldn't throw it. Now the Gemara quotes an incident about this. The Gemara says that Mazutra and Rav Ashi were eating bread together, and they brought some food. They brought some dates and some pomegranates and some other food. So Mazutra took a piece of cooked meat and he threw it to Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says, "What are you doing? Don't you know you're allowed to throw food?" The brisa. So the Gemara says, "What do you mean?" The brisa says you're not allowed to throw bread. So Rav Ashi said, "But there's another brisa that says that just like you're not allowed to throw bread, you're not allowed to throw any other food." So Mazurcha said back, there's another brisa that says just like that's only bread you're not allowed to throw, but other food you are allowed to throw. So you have a contradiction between these 2 brisas. The difference is something which becomes disgusting by being thrown because it gets squashed, like cooked dates or some other types of fruit that'll get squashed, that you're not allowed to throw. But something which is hard and doesn't get squashed, doesn't get ruined by being thrown, that's fine. So this piece of meat I'm allowed to throw to you. Okay, now the Gemara quotes another brisa that discusses the halachas of taking proper care of food. The Gemara says, what are you allowed to do to celebrate before a bride and groom, a chassan and a kalas? The Gemara says, you're allowed to pour wine through tubes. They had a special celebration where they walked in the street, they poured the wine through tubes and they caught the wine. It didn't fall on the floor. That's all right. You're also allowed to throw nuts and things like that. That's only during the summer you're allowed to throw them. During the winter, the streets are full of mud, they're soggy, you shouldn't throw them, even though they're hard and they're in the shells, they get full of mud, it's disgusting. Now, loaves of bread you should never throw in celebration because they'll get ruined. Even during the summer, they fall on the floor, it becomes disgusting. Now, the Gemara similarly launches into the halacha. What happens if you take a piece of food into your mouth and you start eating it and you realize if it got to say a bracha? So the Gemara says you should shift it to the side of your mouth and then say the bracha. Now the Gemara has 3 conflicting brisas of what to do in a situation like this. One says you should spit it out, one says you should move it to the side of your mouth, and the other one says you should swallow it. So what are you supposed to do? One says it's not a contradiction, 3 different cases. If it's liquid, you cannot possibly move it to the side of your mouth, therefore you have to swallow it. Now, assuming that it's not liquid, what should you do with it? So it depends. If it's something that gets disgusting, if you spit it out and then it'll get wasted, you won't be able to eat it, then you should move it to the side of your mouth, and then you can say the bracha like that. If, however, it won't get disgusting, spit it out, say the bracha, and then put it back in. Now the Gemara asks why. If you are allowed to move it to the side when it'll get disgusting, so even if it won't get disgusting, move it to the side of your mouth and say the bracha that way. The Gemara says no. We have a pasuk that says, Yemale piti losecha, your mouth is supposed to be fully devoted to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's praises. You should not be doing anything else while you're saying a bracha or any sort of praise, and therefore you should have an empty mouth. If you can't, because it'll get ruined and you won't be able to eat it, it'll cause the loss of the food, then you can move it to the side, and again, if it's a liquid and you have nothing to do, you have to swallow it, that's okay. But otherwise, if you have an option, you should certainly spit it out.